Welcome to Jazz Zone Together, our online jazz community where we will provide jazz education resources, interviews with jazz educators, artists, and celebrities, along with valuable tips and repertoire suggestions. Today, we welcome a Jazz Zone Together, one of the most highly renowned trumpet players in the world, Scotty Barnhart. Scotty has served for the last 10 years as director of the Count Basie Orchestra. In addition to that vital role, he's a faculty member at the School of Music at Florida State University. He's a multi Grammy winner and a strong advocate for jazz music and jazz education. Now I'll bring in Dick Dunscomb to conduct the interview with Scotty. Dick, take it away.
Thank you, Bob. And boy, this is going to be something special. The renowned and idealized Scotty Barnhart. Welcome, Scotty.
Oh, thank you for having me, man. Thank you very much. My pleasure to be here.
We're just thrilled. We'd like to start the interview by having you share how you got started in music and how you what led you to pursue music and music education as your career path.
Well, I guess, in a nutshell, my mother was a musician. She passed away a couple years ago, but I guess through her is where I get my musical genes, whatever you want to call it. I definitely get my work ethic from my dad and my music genes from my mom. So the combination turned out pretty well, I guess. But she was a vocalist and a pianist, and I grew up in Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta under Daddy King, Dr. King Sr., and my mother grew up with Dr. King Jr. And, in that church, even to this day, there were always at least 4 choirs, a different one every Sunday. Mm-hmm. And so I got my share of Handel, of gospel, of Bach, of, all of these different things. And I was even in the children's choir myself. So I guess I grew up in an environment that was very just conducive to gathering music, or just not gathering, but you know what I mean? I was just immersed in it. Every week at church, and then in school, when I got to 5th grade, the school system at that time in Atlanta said if you want to be in a band, you pick an instrument, you take this permission slip home, have your parents get whatever you want to play, and bring it back, and whatever you come back with, we'll place you in the proper, group. So if you get a trumpet, like I did, you put you in the wind ensemble. If you get to bring a violin, we'll put you in the strings. And I actually asked for a violin, but my mom came home with the trumpet. That's a whole nother story. But that's how I started. Seriously, true story. That's how I started playing trumpet. She just came home with the trumpet instead of a violin, and I took to it easily. It was always easy for me to play, and it's always still easy in a way. So I never had any issues with struggling to try to figure out if that was what I was supposed to be doing, if that was what I was supposed to be doing. And when I got about 9th grade or so, I just remember it just hit me. I just could feel it. It was like a blazing inferno, man. I had already been exposed to the music of Basie, and then all of a sudden Freddie Hubbard, and then my high school band director was always playing music in the band room, and then all of these things happened. I saw Basie live. I ended up seeing Wynton on TV. I ended up hearing a recording of Freddie Hubbard, and of course Duke Ellington, another great trumpeter, Al Hurt. I was listening to Al Hurt. My father had 8 tracks of him, so I was listening to all of this stuff, man. And then, of course, I saw Doc Severinsen on TV every night. My parents used to let me stay up to watch Carson just so I could see if I could see Doc. And then Doc came to Atlanta, and I went to go see him live. That was something when I was 9th grade, 10th grade. So I had all of these things going on, and I just knew it was just a natural thing. I never looked at it as, okay, let me choose to play trumpet. Let me choose to go into music. It was just a natural thing for me to do, and to this day, it's never been a chore. It's never been a situation where oh my God, let me sit down and practice. Oh my God, let me work. No, man, I always wanted to do it, and I still do every single day. I'm at the piano, I'm doing something. I've always wanted to do it. So I guess music for me was just like Picasso said. Somebody once asked Picasso how did he choose to become an artist, or why did he choose to become an artist? And he said, I didn't choose to become an artist. Art chose me. Same thing. That's how I feel. Same thing, man. The music just said, okay, we're going to give these talents to Scotty and see what he does. That's kind of how I feel about it. So I'm just grateful that I was in a situation with good parents and a great family a great church environment musically and spiritually too. And then of course, great teachers in elementary school. My first trumpet teacher just passed away a year ago. I played at his funeral. He was very important. And my high school band director, he was also very important. And my high school band director, I have to say, his name was Gordon Boykin. He was my high school band director at Gordon High School in Atlanta. But he was the one that really saw at that age of when I was 12, 13, right around in there, he kind of saw, okay, this kid has some talent. He's better than the others. Let me give him some things to kind of spur him on or encourage him. And that's what he did. He walked right up to me one day, man, and I never forget, out of the clear blue, he said, man, he used to always point his finger. He said, man, Count Basie is in town. You going to see him? I said, okay. I went, man. Then a couple of years later, he said, you need to get a Schilke 24 mouthpiece. Now, for trumpet players, that's like the biggest mouthpiece they make, because I have thick lips, and I couldn't play a 7C. That's what came with the instrument. But anyway, so that was another great piece of information he gave me. Then he said, you need to go to summer camp at Northwestern University. You need to go. Okay. I went to summer camp at Northwestern University. Then he said, yeah, you need to go to Florida A&M University too. I had offers to go to Northwestern, New England, and all these places. He said, nope. So, man, I had great teachers, and which is why, I'm so fortunate to be in a position to be a teacher today, to be a professor, and because I know the impact that my words can have on a student or my actions, and I just try to be positive. I try to identify things that I can help them with. But Mr. Boykin, man, this guy and he was one of those kind of guys back in those days. We're talking in the 70s and 80s. He could take his belt off, man. He could take his belt. They used to be able to do that. They would take my belt. I remember he told me one day, he said, man, did you get a private teacher yet? I said, man. He said, I'm going to take my belt off. So I got my private teacher, man, Kevin Isaac Smith, who was in the U.S. Army Band. They had come to our high school for a concert. And I remember telling him, I want to see if I can study with this guy. And he just stayed on me, man. So I was just very fortunate, man. And luckily for me, music was something that was always in my household. We would listen to everything from James Brown to Basie to Willie Bobo to gospel music on Sundays to Al Hurt to Floyd Kramer. Remember Floyd Kramer, country pianist? Floyd Kramer, man. We listened to everything, man. Earth, Wind, and Fire. I grew up with the Jackson 5. So I was just listening to some Cuban music a second ago. So I love music. I don't care where it's from. If it's not distorted and loud and crazy, I love to listen to it. And just so happens the Basie Orchestra is the epitome of that for me in jazz. I mean, the crispness, the tightness, but looseness, the swing, the feel. Oh my God, man. So I'm the luckiest cat in the world, man.
You sure are. And so are we to have you with all that love coming through. And I feel it in your playing, man. It's really good. Can you back up just a minute to FAMU? That's such a special place. And describe a little bit of your experiences there.
You said FAMU, Florida A&M?
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah. I mean, that school, man, has been known to be a great producer of great talent. Cannonball in that alley went there. They're buried just minutes away from me from here. All of my instructors, Lindsey Sargent, who was very important to me. He's now the chairman of the music department there. But the thing about FAMU, I have to say, you were not a number. I remember the first night at band practice, because, go up through the marching band, the late Dr. William P. Foster, who started in 1946 there and built that thing into a world renowned to what it is today. My very first night as a freshman, in the first band meeting we had, he said, okay, how many of you guys, you're freshmen, you're coming out of high school, how many of you guys were first chair in your high school band or all-state or whatever? Everybody's hand went up. I said, oh my God. Oh, I mean, 100 hands went up, man. Mm-hmm. So here I am in this situation where I was surrounded by people who were just as talented or more talented than me. And it made me understand, okay, I gotta raise my game. I've got to really, really be good. I gotta make sure I'm practicing. I got to make sure that I'm, doing what I love to do. I love to do it. So just be good at it and listen to what these people are saying. So I was in another great environment. I tell people all the time, two of the greatest organizations I've ever been in my life are the Count Basie Orchestra and the Florida A&M University Marching Band.
Wow.
Now that marching band, you're talking 250, 300 people. Everybody was talented, man. I mean, we'd be sitting in the stands, listen to the other marching bands, and we'd just be laughing at them because we knew they weren't better than we were. We would be playing everything from Bach. Right behind that would be a James Brown piece. Right behind that would be the Barnum and Bailey's favorite march or something. Right behind that would be Flight of the Bumblebee. I'm serious. I'm talking about a college band. No other bands are doing that. Then you get on the field and you're marching and dancing and doing 360-degree turns and splits while you're playing, man. I still can't believe I did that. But my band director knew that was the place to send me because I would be surrounded by people who were just as serious, about it, and who would be like a family. It was like a family unit. We helped one another. We had guys, man, in that marching band with perfect pitch, man. I mean, we would be watching the game, but we'd be listening to the other band. Man, that cat, they hear the third trumpet's a flat. That's the kind of stuff I was around. And a marching band. I mean, every day in practice, man, that's not the bass player, he's playing the wrong note, or whatever it may be. So what that band helped me to do, and the Basie Orchestra helped me to crystallize, was the attention to detail. That's the difference to me that makes or breaks a professional musician. I mean, as far as the level that you can get to, is the attention to detail. Basie was a master of attention to detail. So was Thad Jones. So was, people like John Coltrane, whomever. But the Basie Orchestra, man, by the time I got there, I had been prepared and taught so well through my experiences at FAMU that it was just another professional organization I was in. I just had to find my place. That's all. And I just wanted to be as good as I could be. And as a matter of fact, the guy whose place I took with Basie went to FAMU also, Melton Mustafa. Yeah, the trumpeter Melton Mustafa. His sons eventually graduated too, but he was there. I got there in '82. I think Melton got there in '72 or something like that. But we've had the Basie Orchestra's had about 5 musicians from FAMU that were a part of the Count Basie Orchestra, and Ellington Orchestra too. So it's a good university. It still is a great school, man. And I went to undergrad there, but although I teach at Florida State, they're just less than a mile apart. Right. So I'm always interacting with both. And one of the things I'm trying to do is, at some point, I just been so busy to do it, but establish a big band comprised of students from both schools, and just have like a weekly gig somewhere and just read charts and like the Vanguard band. So I've been meaning to do that, and I'm still going to try to do it. I got the charts to do it. It's just a matter of finding a spot, and every Monday night people can know they can go hear a big band of the best students, and maybe some of the faculty members too. So, but I'm glad you asked about that. FAMU is a great university. It's just a wonderful school. Still is.
Well, this coming year might be a good time to do that too, because you got new leadership coming into FAMU with Rodney Dorsey. And also at FAMU, Shelby's doing a wonderful job there.
Yeah. He and I came up together.
Yeah.
1982, yeah. Shelby and I.
So, okay, now you're a featured soloist with the Count Basie Orchestra, and you've been that for many years. But before you became the director, you were a strong part of that orchestra's legacy. Share some of those most memorable moments with us.
Oh, man, there were so many, man. I think for me, when I joined in '93, 30 years ago, I was the youngest guy there, and seeing Frank Foster and hearing Frank Foster just warm up was he played with Monk, he played with everybody, man. But to sit next to him while he's warming up, the musical things are the things that stand out to me most. I mean, the glamour part of it too. I mean, we played with Sinatra, with Tony Bennett, and played people like that, and Carnegie Hall. All that stuff is great. But the musical part of it, for me, is what's the most important, what I remember most, what we were doing musically. Because I remember the first night in the first concert I had, I remember how much I was shocked at how soft the band could play. I could not believe, man. I was like, wow. And I had to keep playing softer and softer just to tuck myself into what they were doing. And then the next tune is quadruple forte. It's like, oh my, the dynamic levels were just,
Mhm.
and it was effortless. The tempo didn't rush when we got loud or slow down when we got soft. The tempo was so the musical part of that orchestra is what floored me and still floors me when we do what we do. When I know what we get ready to do, when we get ready to play a chart or come to a certain part of the chart where we're going to go in a split second from playing triple pianissimo to just quadruple forte in a split second and then back down to pianissimo. That's the kind of stuff we do, and I make sure we still do that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But musically, to me, that's the kind of thing that just supersedes all other parts of it, what we do musically, because that's why we're still around, what we do musically. Now, the most memorable things will be, of course, concerts of like Sinatra, working with him and meeting him. And I had all of the trumpet solos behind him too. And what was interesting about that is that I had already been studying Sweets Edison solos behind Frank. So I got to my chair and looked at my book and said Sweets on it. I said, oh my gosh, I had all of these fills that Sweets had behind Frank. So I had to figure out how to do that. And luckily I had been studying Sweets, so I knew sometimes I would have maybe a measure of fills I could play. Sometimes I had 2 beats. And one of those beats had to be a rest. I had to figure out, okay, well, I just got a quarter note. Bam! You know? And I remember after that concert with Frank that week, I ran into Sweets a few months later. I said, man, how did you figure out how to work, play these fills behind Sinatra? Because Sinatra loved Sweets. He would always record with him. And he would wait till Sweets would be available to record too, is what I heard. But Sweets told me, he said, man, all I did was just listen. And if I had a beat to play, I would just play one beat. If I had 10 beats, I'd play, So he just reinforced the fact that music is oral. You have to listen. You have to really let your ears tell you what to do. And being in the Count Basie Orchestra, that's to the nth degree, man. When you sit in that section, the trumpet section or any section in the orchestra, when you start playing, all of that DNA that has been in those chairs before you, you have to figure out how to just listen to what's happening around you and then blend in. This is why people, I have to explain to people when we do master classes and clinics, they ask about the lead player and you follow the lead player. Well, that doesn't work with the Basie orchestra. If the lead guy is new, if he's the newest one in the section, he doesn't come in and run and tell everybody else what to do. He's just getting there. He doesn't know what's going on. He has to listen to figure out what's going on around him. Then you start playing your part in such a way to first figure out what's going on. And the lead player in the Basie orchestra has to earn that right. That's right. That's not a right that's just given just because you're playing lead. No, you got to earn. Are you playing in the right style? Lead has nothing, So anyway, I've learned so much stuff about how things really work in the Basie orchestra and in the Ellington orchestra too. I did 3 tours with them. I know how things work there. So the Basie orchestra for me has just been a place where I just, I've loved every second of it. We go back on the road in about 2 weeks. I can't wait to go. I'm already sending the guys new charts we're going to do. We haven't done some charts in a while. Put in some new things, take some things out we've been playing. So it's just a continuation of what Basie started 88 years ago, man. We're still trying to swing and still got to make sure you have the right people and making sure we do what we need to do.
As a musician and a listener to the Basie Orchestra, which I've done my entire life, mm-hmm. I was at Purdue University many years ago, and the Basie mm-hmm. Orchestra was coming to play. Mm-hmm. And what happened was the band arrived, but the music didn't arrive.
Yeah, that's happened to us too. Yeah.
And so some of the guys came up to me and said, can you got any Basie charts? Well, they didn't even know the names of them. The numbers is what they gave. And they played a magnificent concert. How is that possible?
Man, look, it's happened to us twice since I've been in the orchestra. Not all of the orchestra music was missing, but the trumpet book got left at the airport twice. They got left at the airport in New Orleans and they got left at the airport in New York. So we had to do 2 concerts, one at Disney Hall in LA, packed house, no trumpet music. This was before I was director, so I was back in the section. But when, we play together so much and so often that, we began to memorize those charts after the 3rd or 4th time. Mm-hmm. Every night there's certain things we play all the time, so you just got, and that's just how my mind is anyway. I love to memorize charts. I hate looking at music. That's the first thing I do is, okay, let me go ahead and memorize this. Even today, out front as a conductor, when we play certain things, in my mind, my trumpet part is still in my mind, in my brain. My second part that I played on the chart, I'm still seeing it in my mind as I'm listening, as I'm standing up front. So for me, it was always a beautiful thing to be able to rise to the challenge to play something from memory. And I had no problems doing it. And most of the guys didn't either. But because we play together so much, not having the music show up sometimes wasn't that big of a deal. Now, we were in Peru one time about 3 or 4 years ago, and I think the trombone music and the rhythm section music didn't make it. So luckily for me, I have all of these things on PDF, like in a little thumb drive now in my keeping my trumpet case. So we just found the nearest, I think the hotel and the nearest Kinko's or print center or something. And I just found the charts we needed and I printed everything out and we taped it all up and bam, there's the music arriving. Now it's at the hotel, you know. But so, you know, we're in a position now if something happens like that, we're not in a situation where we won't have the music. Or if we are, I wouldn't panic because I know I can play things that the guys would really know. And it's because we play it so much that most of the guys have it all memorized. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk now about you becoming the director. What was that transition like, and some of the highlights?
Well, what happened was this is 93, 94, I think it was. We did a recording with Tito Puente in New York City at the I forget the studio, but we recorded from 9 to 12. And then we had 2 hours off because we had to go to Thailand. We had to catch a flight to Thailand that night, to Bangkok. We were going to Thailand. So we had this 2 hour window where we could just, you know, go whatever. So for what I wanted to do, I wanted to go to the bookstore to get a book for the flight because, you know, in the trip, it's a long trip, 17-hour flight, come to think of it. Mm. So at that time, the Count Basie Orchestra offices were right next door to Carnegie Hall, like right across the street from Carnegie Hall. So the bookstore that I wanted to go to happened to be right next door to Carnegie Hall. So I'm walking down to the bookstore to get a book, and I passed the door to the Basie offices, and out is coming Basie's son, our CEO at the time, Aaron Woodward. And I said, "Oh, hey, Aaron, how you doing?" Because I think he was flying with us too. I said, "Hey, how you doing?" He said, "Hey, how you doing, man? As a matter of fact, I want to talk to you about something." Now, when the boss says that, I'm gonna talk to you. Like, oh man, what did I do, man? You know what? You know that's what I'm thinking, right? And he said, "Yeah, I want to talk to you." So later on, when he finally called me, he just said, "Are you ready?" I said, "What do you mean? Am I ready?" He said, "Well, you're next." I said, "Oh." Then I got what he was talking about. So, unbeknownst to me, Frank Foster and the older gentleman in the orchestra, had already begun to put in place and suggest that I become the next leader after Frank Foster. And that was before Bill Hughes, because I guess they saw in me the future. They saw in me that somebody, and I definitely can say this, not to brag it, nobody's more dedicated to that orchestra than me. I'll just flat out still say that to this day. I mean, that's how I feel. Nobody's more passionate about every single facet of it, which is why I ended up becoming the light and sound guy. I became the union representative of the orchestra. I became the spokesman. I was doing all of these things, man, not even thinking about being director. And I hadn't even begun to think like that yet. But Aaron helped me to realize, okay, he almost helped me to see my future in a way, which ended up, that's what I'm doing now. But they could see that before I could even see it. So that's kind of the leadership kind of thing kind of happened. So basically I ended up having a good 20-year apprenticeship, I guess you could say. You know, watching how Grover led the band, how Bill led the band, how Foss led the band, how Dennis McCrail led the band, what they did, what they didn't do, what I thought they should have done. So by the time I got to become leader, I had been under 4 guys who led the orchestra. And that was the best training for me, you know, to see how things were going musically, how they, you know, just all different facets, the personalities, how you lead men. So by the time it happened, I'd say even 6 or 7 years before it happened, everybody knew at some point it was going to be me. And I even knew it was just a matter of waiting my turn, waiting till the opportunity was perfect to where there was no other choice but me, basically. And that's kind of how that happened. So when the day finally came, we were in Tokyo in Japan, there wasn't this big, all of a sudden, paradigm shift, like, oh, okay, now Scotty's leading it. No, it wasn't that at all. I was already in a leadership position, so it was a very smooth thing. You know, there was no, you know, so that's kind of how it happened. And so I was prepared for it, and I worked hard for it, and I just demonstrated with my abilities and with my dedication to what was happening that I was the right, and I knew I was the right guy for the job. Again, I don't know how that even comes off, but I just knew I was. And because I was all about understanding the fact that this is Mr. Basie's orchestra. This is not my orchestra. This is not Scotty Barnhart's orchestra at all. It never will be. This is Count Basie's orchestra. Period. End of story. End of story. There's no discussion when it comes to that with me. No discussion. So this is why I think I've had the respect of the organization and the guys from day one. And we've been able to do some things that the other guys couldn't do, you know. As the orchestra gets older and older, it gets a little bit more complicated because you're getting further and further away from the origins. But just like I tell people with the New York Philharmonic, the New York Phil, man, started in 1852, man. Nobody questions their longevity at all because they have the right people in place. It's just that simple to me. That's how I look at it. As long as we have the right people in place, the right personnel, the right leader, playing the right music, no problem. Same thing with the New York Phil. I always use them as an analogy. They started in 1852. Urieli Hill started them. But when they went through Toscanini and Mahler and Bernstein, each one of those conductors just kept doing the right thing, kept hiring the right people, making sure you play the right music. I understand that's what my job is. This is why, again, we're getting ready to go on tour in a couple of weeks. I'm making sure I'm putting things back in the book the orchestra used to play but hadn't played in a while. So, you know, I try to keep it fresh. And the orchestra itself is the star. There's no one soloist or one person that's the star. Mr. Basie always wanted it that way. So when he left this earth, he had set it up in such a way to keep going. So again, I'm just a steward at this point, you know, making sure we do the right things. And when I'm gone, whoever's next after me needs to understand what I understand, that this is Mr. Basie's orchestra. It'll never be anybody else's, ever. It'll always be his name. It'll always be his music. It'll always be his way of doing things, his sound. If you got the right people, you still can get the sound. So even today, when we play one or two notes, you know it's us. You don't know it. You know it's not Ellington. You don't know it's not Lincoln Center. It's not Glenn Miller. Oh, that's Basie. As long as we can keep doing that, then I'm doing the right thing.
Okay. Well, let's shift gears a little bit.
Right.
As a fellow jazz educator, I'd like to have you tell us what you tell your trumpet students today to prepare them for the real performance world.
Okay, well, first and foremost is the instrument itself. you got to study the instrument. You've got to be a student all your life, every waking second of every day, a student of the instrument, first and foremost. That's the first thing. I love the trumpet. I love anybody that plays it well. As a matter of fact, the Cuban music I was just listening to a second ago, I was my girlfriend and I were having dinner at a Mexican restaurant, a new place here in town, Tallahassee, just opened up a week ago. And we're sitting there, but the music that they were playing was knocking me out because the trumpet players in the band were clean, man, and in tune. I was like, oh, who is that? So I called the waiter over. I said, man, what is this playing? So he shows me this thing on his phone, the group that it was. I ordered the CD on iTunes right on the spot just because I love the trumpet players. So my point is, you have got to be a student of the instrument first. Find out who the top 10 or 15 people that have ever played that instrument are. Who are they? And study what they did. No matter what the genre of music is, jazz or classical, whatever it is, who's considered to be the greatest people to play? And in the jazz world, the jazz musicians have added more to the vocabulary of the instrument because a lot of that stuff isn't written down. So, but in the classical world, you got your Hirsis, you got the Maurice Andres, you got Arvin, all these great players, you know, Rafael Mendez, you know, Phil Smith even today, all these great players. So I made it a point of making sure that I got a teacher, well, my band director in high school there, who was I've never had a jazz trumpet teacher, ever. My trumpet teachers have always been classical players. The records have been my teachers as far as when it comes to jazz. I put on a Freddie Hubbard record, I would learn that solo. That's how Freddie was my teacher when it came to jazz trumpet, or Miles, or Winton, or whomever it be, Lee Morgan, Louis Armstrong, Dizzy Gillespie, Clifford Brown. I had the records for those guys, but as far as an actual teacher, I've had 3 classical trumpet teachers. Kenneth Kronholtz here at FAMU, who also taught at the University of Florida, and Kevin Eisensmith. And the thing about Kevin Eisensmith, he started me right in Sigmund Herring method, the Arban, all of these books, Herbert Clark, all these things, man. So those things became my lessons every week. I never had a jazz trumpet teacher as as for lessons. I just had the records, but I'm glad I had it the way that I had it, because Kevin showed me how to. He unlocked, or he provided the tools to me that showed me how to unlock the technical aspects of the instrument. And I ask my students to sing the very first thing every time I get a new student. And I just repeat what happened to me in my first lesson with Kevin, because it changed my life. He simply asked me this question. He said, "Okay, what are the three basic areas technically of the trumpet that if you can cover these areas, there's nothing you can't play?" He said, "I guarantee you, if you take these three areas, basic fundamental technical areas of the trumpet, and really master them, you'll be able to play anything." Now imagine telling that to a 12-year-old kid. That's what he was, and I was like, well, I don't know. So the answers were simple. Well, simple now, but he said finger dexterity, meaning, exercises that your scales, whatever you need to do to get your fingers together so there's nothing tricky and all that. Another, in no particular order. The second one would be lip flexibility. You got to be able to slur wide intervals. That'll cover your lip trills and all that. That'll round out your sound. That'll cover your range and your whole range of even your pedal tones. That'll cover the whole range of the instrument. And the last thing is tonguing, multiple tonguing, single, double, and triple tonguing. Tonguing covers your attack, your clarity of your finesse, and all. And you put all those three things together, and at every solo that you hear somebody play, you can break it down into those three areas. And I was like, wow. Oh, now that you know that, every time you practice and when you warm up, you play something and you work on something from all three of those areas. And he was right, man. Whether it's a Dizzy Gillespie solo, whether it's the hide and the humble of Carlos Venice or whatever, I know how I can play those things because I know where to isolate the things to work on. So that's the first thing I deal with my trumpet students. That's the very first thing. And to me, if they don't have a love for that, for doing that, they're not going to be successful playing jazz. Simple as that. They're not going to be successful trying to do that, because the tools that you need in order to become a great jazz musician are the basic fundamentals of your instrument first and foremost. You need that. I mean, you can kind of maybe get around it, but I always deal with students. I say, look, if you want to be great, you can study with me. I can show you what to do. I know what the greats did, because a lot of them were friends of mine. I can tell you exactly what Wynton practiced because he told me what he practiced. I can tell you exactly what Freddie Hubbard practiced because he told me what he practiced. I can show you this stuff, but you need the instrument covered first. You always got to have that in motion. So that's how I deal with my students. And if you're going to try to play a Clifford Brown solo and your tongue not together, you're not going to be able to play that solo, period. I don't care who you are. You're not going to be able to play it. If you haven't done get your single tongue, get your open up your throat, you're not going to be able to play a Clifford Brown solo, period. And if you don't have your range together, ain't nowhere in the world you're going to be able to play a Louis Armstrong or Dizzy Gillespie solo. It's not going to happen. Or Maynard Ferguson solo. Ain't nowhere in the world you're going to be able to do that. So the instrument, every day when I play, I begin on those three areas, man. I'm warming up to this day. I'm doing my lip flexibilities. I'm doing my tonguing, single, double, triple. I'm doing my lip trills. I'm doing my octave leaps or whatever you want to call them. My Herbert clock, my favorite little exercises for my fingers. I do that stuff every time I touch the instrument. Now, I've been playing the trumpet for 49 years now. Every time I touch it, I do that. So when I'm improvising, I don't have to think about stuff. If I want to play something high and fast, it's there. I don't have to think about it. So when I explain that, when I explain it that way to my students, those that are really serious, they get it, and they can't wait to deal with it. And they're very successful. Those that don't want to practice, nothing you really can do. I can show you where to look. I always tell my students, I can show you where to look, but I can't tell you what to see. I can show you exactly where to look, but I can't tell you what to see when it comes to jazz. So jazz, that's a whole nother level of trying to figure out what it is that they want to do. That's the first thing I kind of get to when it comes to jazz itself. What is it that you're trying to do? And my response to that for my own self when I realized it, I simply wanted to be included in the names of all of the great trumpet players, even if I'm the last one. You start talking about Buddy Bolden and King Oliver and Vic Spiderbeck and Louis Armstrong. At the end of that list, if it's Scotty Barnhart, if he's the last one, that's fine by me. But I'm in that lineage of great players. So that's all I wanted to be. And still the same way. I didn't change. I still want to be considered to be one of the people that is great at what they're doing. I mean, I also, when I got into teaching, I've been teaching at FSU, 20 years now? And in addition to that, a lot of private students. And one of the things that I think the biggest revelation that I found and had to realize is that not all students want to be great.
Mm.
I had to realize that because I'm thinking if they come to study with me, then they want to be great with it. Not every student wants to be great, man. I had to finally understand that. And so even though when I do see that, it doesn't change what I'm offering to give them. I don't, okay, well, I'm not going to give him, no, I give them the same, but it's just up to them to do it. So teaching jazz, man, it's been it's a joy. I'm always at the piano, because to me, the piano is indispensable when you're really working with jazz. You just, every great jazz trumpet player that I know, all of them play piano, all of them, and well, whether it's Nicholas Winton, Terrence Blanchard, whomever, Freddie Hubbard. When I first met him, he was at the piano. I was on the trumpet. He was playing piano for me. So piano, and the way that I explain the piano is that if you really think about it, 95% or better of all of the greatest music ever written by human beings was written with the piano. It wasn't written on the trumpet. Mahler, Bach, Beethoven, Charlie Parker wrote at the piano. Miles wrote at the piano. John Coltrane wrote at the piano. U.B. Blake, whomever it may be, piano. So Monk even, So I try to get my students to see the totality of what's possible. Although I'm a trumpet player, that doesn't mean I don't listen to vocalists and really study them. I listen to everybody, man. And it's a lifelong thing. It's not something that you pick up and you deal with for a few years and then you leave it alone. I mean, people may do that, but they don't want to be great at it. For me, I understand it's a lifelong thing. And the journey is the fun part. The journey is the fun part. Like I tell people all the time, when I'm on the road with the Basie Orchestra, being on the road, on the buses and the planes, and on stage, that's the fun part. That's when you really have fun, man. And it's all a part of the journey. So for me, music is a lifelong journey that doesn't end until you take your last breath. And so I'm just trying to pass down whatever experiences I've had working with people, from Sinatra to Wynton to Marcus Roberts to Herbie Hancock to Tito Puente, all these people I work with. It's just a joy to be able to make music, number one, and to meet like-minded people who understand what you're trying to do. That's a beautiful thing, man. When you meet somebody first time I met Oscar Peterson, he knew I was a serious young musician, which is why he invited. I remember his arms saying, "Come on, man, come on in my dressing room." He wouldn't have done that if he knew, if he'd have thought that I'm some just bum trying to get an autograph. He knew, he could just tell by he looking at me. I can tell you, okay, come on in. So, man, music is a gift to be whole, number one, but to cherish, man. Music is serious, man. I don't play around. I mean, I have the most fun with it. All my closest friends are musicians, and the fun we have is indescribable. I can't even tell you what it's like. The kind of fun we have, the jokes. Oh man, you kidding me? I've never laughed so hard with with other people than I have with musicians. So I'm just glad my mom, whatever her genes were, whatever the universe told her to, have this son, and okay, he's going to get your music genes. I'm glad that happened, and I'm just trying to have fun with it and enjoy life.
That's such important information that you've shared. It's just incredible. And, your book that you've written has been really highly recognized throughout the jazz education world. What led you to create that amazing book?
Man, it was actually an accident. I didn't say one night, let me write a book. What happened was I was on the road with Marcus Roberts. This is back in 1991, 90 or 91. Marcus, people don't know, he's a pianist who was with Wynton for 6 years.
Sure.
When he's blind, he's a great musician, but he's a hell of a musician. So I was in his first band. When he left Wynton's band and started his own group, I was in his first group, his first quintet. So we were giving a concert at Georgia State University in Atlanta one day. And I remember somebody coming to us saying, okay, they would like for you guys to give a master class. I thought it was the whole group as a unit, but they wanted each of us individually to go into a room in the school of music. So for me, that meant jazz trumpet masterclass is what that meant. So all that meant for me was, okay, well, I'm going to talk to the students about the history of jazz trumpet. So I started talking about Buddy Bolden and Freddie Keppert, all of these players, King Oliver, Louis Armstrong. And when I got to Armstrong, I started to play one of his solos. I would talk about Armstrong, then I would play a solo that I learned by ear, whether it was West End blues or Blues in the South, whatever solo I had learned. Then I talked about Roy Eldridge and Dizzy Gillespie. Then I played a Dizzy Gillespie solo. Then I talked about Fats Navarro, Cliff Brown. I played a Fats Navarro, Miles. I played these solos. But as I got into Freddie Hubbard and Winton and people like that, I was able to, and even with Dizzy and Sweets Edison, I was able to intersperse a personal anecdote or personal story because I'd met these people. And so when I talked about Dizzy Gillespie, I talked about also the first time that we met, what he said to me, how we hung out together, how I carried his trumpet case, how I, at Carnegie Hall, wasted a whole cup of coffee on his blue suit. Just stuff like that. Story, yeah, man, that actually happened. But anyway, I would intersperse these stories about my connections to these people. So then at the end of the thing, at the Q&A, I was getting all these questions, and there's one student asked a question. He said, well, he started with a statement. He said, well, first of all, this information you're giving us is great, but is it written down anywhere? And I was like, oh, man. Come to think of it, it's not. Not the stuff that I've been talking about today. I don't know of any book this stuff is in. So it kind of gave me a little spark in my mind. I thought, okay. So I didn't think too much about it until about 4 or 5 months later. It just hit me one day. I'm here in Tallahassee, almost in the same apartment complex where I'm living now. And it just hit me one day, man. And the way that it hit me, it kind of hit me in a backwards kind of a way, which is kind of how it works sometimes. The question was, if I were to walk, and I just posed to myself, if I were to walk into a Barnes & Noble or Borders or any bookstore in the world, and I saw a book that said the history of jazz trumpet on it, or the world of jazz trumpet, what should be in that book? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I answered it. I said, oh, okay. Well, what needs to be in it is first off, the story needs to be told through the mouths and experiences of jazz trumpeters, not from a historian sitting somewhere in an office building on a campus or in their office, but from the actual jazz trumpet players that make this music, that play this music. So I sat down and I said, oh, well, how many trumpet players do I know? So I grabbed a little piece of paper and a pencil and I started writing down names. And I came up with about 75 names in about 15, 20 minutes. That's not bad, 75 people. But by the time I finished my research, I had 1,200 names. And to this day, 20 years later, I got about 1,500 names, probably close to 2,000, So that's how the book began. And so I knew it needed to be told from the mouths of the Freddie Hubbards and people that were still alive, Clark Terry and all these great trumpeters and everybody that I could get. So I ended up interviewing 21 trumpet players: Bobby Shue, Joe Wilder, Stepco Goot, Clark Terry, Ted Curson, Humphrey Littleton, who lived in Britain, all these great trumpet players. And Hal Leonard was in such a hurry that we only used 15 interviews for the first book. And Clark Terry and Freddie Hubbard wrote the foreword for me. But I interviewed Clark, Freddie. I wrote the very first chapter ever written on women jazz trumpet players, which to me, to this day, is ridiculous. The fact that I had to do that, are you kidding me? When I started talking to Clora Bryant and she started telling me all these names of women that had recording contracts that had been completely ignored by the mainstream jazz historians, which is, to me, still inexcusable. Inexcusable, man. That's insane to me. But I was able to find out about a lot of these women that played with Basie, like Valeda Snow, Billy Rogers, who played with Woody Herman, Clora Bryant, Norma Carson, all of these women that were contributing, but because of the way the world is and how it's a man's world, they got kind of shoved to the side and said, oh, you need to be home raising a family. Oh, you need, So I had to deal with all of that. So that's how it happened. And so the book came out in 2005. But I knew I wasn't done researching. I was still kind of about a third of my way into the research. So fast forward 20 years, I just finished the updated version of the book. And now the interview total is 55. 55. Doc Severinsen, Arturo, Nicholas Payton, Randy Brecker. The list is insane. Claudio Roditi, Teramasu Hino, Japanese trumpet player. Tom Harrell, man, I got Wallace Roney, who was his last interview before he died. So now that I'm at the point to where the way the book is now turning out to be exactly how I wanted it to be 20 years ago. I just didn't have time to do it, So now that I've finished all of the interviews, they've been transcribed and everything. It's just a matter of figuring out what publisher it should be with, and I don't think it's going to be with the one that was before. But whoever does it, it just needs to be done right. And now the trumpet players will at least have one volume where you have 55 interviews, man. I mean, that to me, that's incredible. But it took me 20 years to do it. 55. Severinsen, Jimmy LaRocca, the son of Nick LaRocca, who was a trumpet player on the original Dixieland Jazz Band in 1917. I interviewed his son. He even bought out his trumpet that Nick played, that he recorded. Oh, let me show you. That he recorded it. I have it on my wall. Stuff like that, man. This is the original trumpet that Nick used in 1970, the original cornet that his father used in 1917.
Oh, wow.
That's the kind of, I mean, I'm a fan of it. I'm a musician, but I'm a fan too, man. He bought that out, almost had a heart attack. I was like, is that what I think it is? He said, yeah. That's the same cornet used in 1917 on the very first jazz recording. I keep it in the back in a safe. So I went to his, that's Jimmy the Rocker, who was a hell of a trumpet player. He's 80, maybe about 84, 85 right now, but he let me hear recordings of him, and I hadn't heard him. And I'm like, what? So anyway, this updated version of this book will be, the interviews are done now. I even interviewed Fats Navarro's sister. She lives 10 minutes away from me here in Tallahassee. I never knew. I never knew Fats because she used her married name. She worked at FAMU for 40 years. I had no idea. But my girlfriend was telling me she was talking to her attorney one day. He said, yeah, I'm dating this trumpet player, blah, blah. He said, oh, well, my granduncle played trumpet. He was kind of famous. I said, what was his name? She said, I think he said something like Fats. I was like, oh my God, what? Fats Navarro, man. So I went to her house. She's 98 years old. Last summer, I went to her house, and she and Fats used to take piano lessons together in Key West and all this kind of thing. And then when he left, he went to New York and got famous, but he got sick and died early, as you know. So she never got to see him play live. Never got to see him play live. So I put together a quintet. Me and some colleagues here at FSU and some buddies at FAMU put together a quintet. We gave a concert in her driveway of all the Fats Navarro's tunes, man. Oh, that's the least I could do. Went to a driveway. We played Our Delight, all these things that he recorded, and I interviewed her about him, and found out some very interesting information that I won't reveal now, but it'll be in the book. So anyway, I've just been wanting to make sure that I put the right information together. And the information that my fellow trumpeters gave me and gave to the world is just, when you read it, you'll be amazed. There'll be some shocking information in there. It'll be some absolutely hilarious information, which is what I always like. I always like to have some trivial things, just everyday stuff, So that book will be out later on this year, early next year at the very latest. And
let me first of all say thank you for doing this.
Sure,
the people that watch these interviews are jazz musicians, jazz educators, jazz students, and they all need to get a hold of this because this is important stuff. Scotty, this interview has just been incredible, and I can't thank you enough for doing it. But I have one more question. Would you play something for us?
On the piano or trumpet?
Either or both.
Oh, well, I got my horn here. Let's see. Should I play piano or trumpet? Okay, if I play the chord, can you hear that? Can you hear the piano if I play trumpet? Yeah. Okay, well, I'll play a little bit of piano since I'm right here at the piano. Well, since we're talking piano, and probably, and one of the things I tell my students is that Dizzy Gillespie told Miles that he should play piano. Miles went to hear Dizzy. This is how the story goes. Miles went to hear Dizzy one night, some club somewhere in New York. And after the show, Miles went over to Dizzy and said, hey, man, you played this one note on this chord. What was that note? Why did you play this note? And before I play the song I'm going to play, the chord was a minor chord. But Dizzy played a major seventh on a minor chord. So Dizzy, so you hear that lick. And so Dizzy told Miles, he said, look, man, you need to learn how to play the piano so you could see the full spectrum of what's possible for you to play. Now, this was 1946 or 47 when he told Miles this. The very next year, what do we have? Birth of the Cool. Changed Miles's total for the rest of his life. So Miles understood that the piano was important. And Clifford Brown was a good pianist, Dizzy, Winton, everybody I know. So since I'm at the piano and we're talking about that, I'll just play a composition by Dizzy. This is Con Alma by Dizzy Gillespie. how little twist, this is what Hank Jones did to it. So, but what this, I bring that up at the bridge, Dizzy does, but Hank Jones, he does a real 2-5-1. So when I recorded that on my solo record, I don't know how many years ago, Winton and I did a chart on it. We did a duet. We did it the way Hank Jones did it. And it's basically the last A section down a half step. So anyway, piano to me is indispensable, man. It's changed the way that I look at music. It's changed. It's opened. It made my ear stronger. It allows me to, arrange, compose everything right here. So when I'm playing trumpet, I'm thinking this now. I'm not thinking one note at a time. And it definitely changed everything. So I always encourage all of my students, no matter what instrument they play, if you deal with the piano, it'll change everything about how you, and then you could take tunes like Sonata Pathétique, the Beethoven tune. That one there, you can reharmonize it. So I try to take melodies like that and try to reharmonize them, and it just piano. It just I can't walk by one without playing it. So
now, can we get you to play a little trumpet?
Oh, sure. Okay, all right. I just have to have my horn here, so I think I can do something. Let me see here. I'm in my apartment. So let me grab my mute. One second here. What should I play? What you have a request? I'll play that's a good question. What should I play? Let's see here.
How about Con Alma from the perspective of the piano?
Well, I was just thinking about Dizzy. How about I play something with a little swing to it? Since we're talking about Dizzy, how about Groovin' High by Dizzy?
Oh yeah.
I'll do that. I'll play a little Groovin' High. One second. Okay, one. Anyway, just trying to swing through that.
That's something, man. A masterpiece. A masterpiece. Scotty, it's been just a joy to be with you today. And I know that the people that are going to watch this interview are going to love it, just like we did today. Thank you, man.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Scotty.
Thank you, sir.
To our viewers, thanks for watching. We hope you gained some valuable insights from their interviews. Please view other interviews in the series to learn more about the interviewees and their contributions to music education.